All right, let's it should be recording.
Let's try that again. Oh wait, I better hit record on my end as well. Okay.
Hello and welcome to 25 Cents, a video game podcast. I am Chris.
And I'm Nick. Each episode will be making the rounds through our four corners: console, PC, Apple, and tabletop, with a focus on games that are great to play if you've got kids.
And you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts on the web at Goodstuff.network. Sorry, my fade button wasn't working, and it was really loud on the stream. I apologize to the 0 viewers right now currently watching.
Yeah, we were holding on to the theme music there for a little bit longer.
I was enjoying the new intro, so just the corners focus that we have now that I think we talked about last episode. So it's good to focus.
Trying that out, we did some wordsmithing, and now I think we've found our place in the podcast sphere or something.
So I have in family news, it's not a corner. This is sort of the preamble to the corners. We're kind of on our way to console corner. So in transition to console corner, I just have some family news here that we have decided for the month of August, much to our kids' chagrin, that screen time is off the menu for the rest of August, which sounds really dramatic, but actually for us, because of holidays and things, there's actually kind of 2.5 weeks really that we're home for no screen time, and then school or whatever it's called, whatever it's going to be in the fall, will kick in. So it sounds kind of dramatic and intense, and our kids understandably took it fairly intensely yesterday. There was a few discussions that happened about what exactly is screen time.
Some bargaining, perhaps.
Yeah. So we're focusing in on. I need to co-brand this with one of my podcast clients, which is Community and Capital, but we're doing community and creative is our focus for any sort of screen thing. So if you're creating something, you need to have something. If you're using the screen, you need to either have created something afterwards, digitally or otherwise, or it's community, like friends, family, whatever. So not that we're never going to play a family game of Fortnite maybe, or Minecraft or whatever, but just the dedicated kids sitting zombie out for a while. So after day one, I can report it. I can do an update in a couple weeks.
A parenting experiment here.
Exactly. I'm sure we're not the first to try this, and we won't be the last. But it would definitely promoted a bunch of creative output. My one kid was in the garage trying to hammer and screw together some sort of ramp. Another one is building with Lego right now. The other ones, they've discovered some of the rebrickable and the build your Lego things online thing to then create and build that in the real world. And then we have allowed for reading. My one son has tried out the Marvel Unlimited subscription, so he's devouring that now, nice. Which is tangentially related to screen time, but we're allowing the book reading part, comic reading side of it. So I won't have much in the way of kids updates for video games and screens and stuff as much this month, but I'm sure we'll be back full force with school.
We'll definitely have to phase out the some of the summer screen time habits over the next 3 weeks for us until school starts. And we've also generally had a similar exception where, if you're reading a book from the library, or you're drawing or making music on the iPad, that's not kind of eating into your screen time balance. Right. We don't track it that carefully. I mean, as I've said on previous episodes, we do use the screen time feature from Apple to do some limits, but for the most part, we're there, and it's just on the one family iPad for the most part. That said, our screen time the last 2 weeks has been very high in a different form because we were hooked on the Olympics. So There's not a whole lot of game time to report. So probably the biggest thing in terms of games played anyway, probably the biggest thing was 2 weeks ago, I did successfully order a Playdate. So I think we've talked about this little device on the show before. So this is from Panic in Portland.
Oh, wait. We're going into console corner, right? I was going to try this. No, that's not the right one.
Okay, yeah, I can start over. Sorry, I didn't know you had.
We're moving. We're on a journey to console corner.
load up your
There we go. Okay.
PS5s that you're gonna scalp
Yeah.
off the back of the truck.
All right. It's work in progress on the sound. Anyway, so console
All right.
corner, you've the Playdate.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, 2 Thursdays ago, they became available for pre-order. I set a bunch of alarms. I was excited about this one because it's kind of it's right in that indie retro vibe that I think you and I both really find a sweet spot for small
Mm-hmm.
digestible games. I was back and forth a little bit on whether I would pre-order it because of the fact that it's kind of another form of mobile game, and I generally do that on my phone. But I think the hardware appeal and kind of the digestible indie games was really appealing. Now my son does not yet know that this is coming,
Oh,
and I think we'll
does
probably make it a surprise because timing wise, I did get in the first batch of orders, so it should be here sometime around my birthday in the fall.
nice.
But he will certainly have access to this a little. Um, Console size wise, it might actually fit his hands better than mine. Based on some of the images, it's a tiny little guy. Kind of about the size of an old, like one half of a Game Boy SP maybe.
Yeah, I'm just looking.
Um,
I'm for those on the Twitch stream. I'm looking at the Playdate website, and I just realized the hand kind of looks like it's dirty. Or is that just? I don't know if you can make. I was just like, I noticed the fingernails first of all painted nice, but then, or maybe it's just a
no,
darker skinned hand. That's what I was seeing.
yeah,
Anyways,
I think it's just the
very
combination of skin tone and lighting
yeah.
in that image.
Didn't seem like
But
something I'd panic with. Let go.
I think the other thing that'll be an exciting project and kind of going to the what are creative things you could do with screen time is there's going to be two levels of development kit. So there'll be like a full development kit for programmers, but there's also a lighter weight web-based dev kit that I think sounds like it's going to be a little more kid accessible, where you'd be creating things more like HyperCard or Scratch or something where you're using some high level APIs and tools to move sprites around on the screen. So if that holds out, then I think that'll be one of the fun activities. We'll be making some Playdate games together. So did you look at this one at all, or
I
seriously
did.
consider it?
Yeah, I can definitely consider it, and I was really excited for the idea of it beforehand. And then I think the price, like 236 America, is the. I guess that's probably with tax. Maybe do you do taxes in the Amazon
Uh,
state?
yeah, yes. Washington is a no income tax, all the sales tax state.
Gotcha. That's actually that's really nice. But anyways, I think 236 was going to be what 236 US is probably almost 300 Canadian is what it would have been.
Yeah.
And so I think it was just a little too pricey. Like you see the initial price of 179. Sorry, that's your tax price. Anyways, whatever. The US price to Canadian, and then knowing, like I said, I think somewhere on Twitter, maybe on here on our show, like having a Switch that sits unused a lot, adding one more device that sits unused. As neat as this
Right.
is, and like as kind of non-screen timey almost as it feels, because it just even having the crank for something feels like just a
Yeah.
little bit of a gimmick enough to like pull you out of what you're if you're zombie mode on a screen, and the games cannot be as immersive as like a Fortnite on a 50-inch TV or whatever. So still can be lots of fun. So I'm happy to
Yeah,
wait
it'll
and see
definitely be
how it
a
comes out.
different kind of game for sure.
But I'm kind of sad. I got caught up in all the excitement and definitely the fun of having the new thing, the new hotness for sure. And Panicked, I know will do a great job of developing this and building out lots of fun with it down the road. It's not sort of like big corporation that might just lose interest after a while, because they definitely got, from all accounts, it looks like they got a ton of pre-orders, and you're waiting well into 2022 now if you want to get one. So
Yeah, I think there were some issues with the like Shopify, I think it was, site that they used, where people who had set an alarm and were international and tried to order
mm,
missed out, and so the first 20,000 units were gone by the time they were able to get in, unfortunately. So for folks who are not in the U.S., I think it was a little bit harder to get one. But it sounds like they've ramped up production. I think Panic and the folks behind Panic seem to be, they have that kind of indie cred, the indie developer relationships already to have hopefully a pretty long pipeline of games, small, fun little toys and games for this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the question mark may be more the sort of long-term developer ecosystem is like, okay, so they'll have the tools, there'll be these indie developers, but what's the financial incentive for developers? Kind of like we've speculated about how Arcade works and how the App Store currently works on iOS and then on other platforms. Will this be viable for developers long term?
Right, because you basically get the games with the system. It's not like you buy specific games after the fact. Presumably, they probably developed something to like pull down games down the road if they decide to turn on some sort of monetization. But
well, they talked about having seasons of games, and I think that's not, the details on that haven't been fully hashed out yet. So I suspect that'll be part of it. Is there might be some kind of game subscription or some way of new games dropping to your device on a somewhat regular basis, kind of like at least I've enjoyed for Arcade.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, it'll be fun to see. And looks like I just noticed they've got like a development. Not on the dev side, there's software to allow you to stream it to your PC or Mac, I assume, for recording video from it or streaming it, on Twitch or whatever. So I'm sure there'll be lots of people doing stuff like that, and it'll be lots of fun to sort of check out that way vicariously anyways. And I guess hopefully your son isn't listening to this episode and finds out that it's coming. You have to skip this part.
I'll have to skip this part since I'm usually in control of the podcast if he does opt to listen to our show.
Speaking of your kid, actually, you had a little idea here that sounds.
Oh, yeah, he was. I forget what he was talking about, but the other week he was like, "We should have a podcast where you interview video game characters about how they feel about dying all the time." I think that's just the kind of the kind of 7-year-old creativity that comes up in the house every once in a while. Yeah. I could imagine someone doing a good job with that show if they did all the voices and everything.
Has he seen Wreck-It Ralph yet?
Yeah, he very much likes Wreck-It Ralph, and actually I think he likes Breaks the Internet, the second one, more.
Yeah, because that kind of vibe, anyways, is what I was thinking of when I read that. Anyways, it was just like this, the characters who are like annoyed that they have to always keep dying and wish they could do more, break out of the role that they're supposed to be in.
It's possible that that is inspired by our multiple viewings of that movie.
All right, let's head to a new corner.
In here.
Throw a little thunder in the mix for no reason.
We need like somebody who knows engines to take a look at that. Sounded a little rough.
Some issues. Just do a quick laser shot. All right, PC Corner, we're headed to. I'll throw in before we dive deeper into some gaming industry news, I guess. But just Fortnite still continues to be my guilty pleasure go-to. I'm tempted by other games. I've thought about buying. I was going to make a note of it. It was like a city building, kind of tile building game that I posted about in the Discord, but that I was tempted to pick up just for some fun. Dorf Romantic, it's called. I don't think we talked about it on the show before, but it just looks like a chill kind of world building game. Beautiful looking graphics and that, but I haven't picked it up yet. It's on $10 in Steam preview still, I think. So if you've played that, let me know. I'd love to hear if it's fun or not. You haven't tried that, have you?
No, I saw your link to it, and I think there's another little like chill city building game that was coming out, and now I'm blanking on the name of it, that kind of looked like you were building like a little Venice of canals and stuff.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
I'll have to find that one, because I know for sure those are both ones that would appeal to my son. I think unfortunately because they would be on PC, we probably wouldn't have easy access to them with our current setup.
Yeah, I'd have to boot camp it in and pick it up that way. It's $11.49 Canadian, so pretty cheap game. It's in early access right now.
Yeah.
Has nice, like just this little subtle so it looks like almost like Settlers of Catan tiles that you're dropping to build the world each time, and it has nice little bounce animation as they drop in, the plants form and stuff. It's just like little touches like that kind of like tweak my whatever video game visual kind of aesthetic that I like.
Chill.
Yeah.
City building, almost like tabletop games kind of leaking into the digital form a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of an old game that I haven't played. I don't know if it holds up anymore, but Populous it was like a god building, god game kind of thing. That's similar. Idea, anyways. That you're kind of like trying to either survive or not. But anyways, on to Blizzard has been in the news a little bit, and it feels like it's worth just mentioning.
Quick content warning, because if you're aware of this story, it deals a lot with some pretty bad workplace harassment and related stuff. So just be aware that this discussion will go into that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to give sort of just a higher level overview of some of that?
I mean, it's the pretty classic video game industry story of the mostly men in power at a studio have made it an extremely toxic work environment for mostly women at the studio, even to the point of, seeming to prey on, target junior developers, push them out of the industry, look to them for relationships in inappropriate contexts. I mean, the whole thing. And I think the key parts of the story is that a lot of that feeds into the way Blizzard's games are made. And certainly I've alluded to before, I put many hours into World of Warcraft and some of the other Blizzard games over the years. We've talked about on this show kind of how I've ducked in and out of Hearthstone here and there. And yeah, I mean, I think it's an unfortunate pattern that we see again and again. There's a few articles linked. One of the interesting things that came out of this was there's this viral video going around. I think you even reposted it at one point of a woman at a panel Q&A at BlizzCon 2010 standing up and asking basically, why are all the female characters in World of Warcraft walking around in looking like Victoria's Secret models? And I was like, wait a minute, I know her. And it's because I was actually aware of this at the time, but this was one of my old guildmates. She primarily went by her character name Xantia, and she had attended BlizzCon, stood up, asked this question. The all-male panel was very dismissive. The men in the crowd start laughing at the idea that the women in the game shouldn't just be objectified. And she actually did a few days ago a really great interview on Kotaku anonymously about sort of both her experience with that and how her relationship to games, Blizzard and otherwise, has changed over the years. So that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I don't know what the answer is here, other than like holding these people to account, making them face consequences. They can't. I know Blizzard's already started some leadership shuffling. There's been some announcements in the last few days. I think their shareholder meeting was kind of coming up, and I think the bottom line alarm started going off. So they're trying to put out the fire, but unless if any of these folks just leave and go found another studio or go to another studio, they're not really going to be punished for creating this kind of toxic company culture that it's based on all the worst stereotypes of bad video game development. And yeah, I think for me, I'm gonna just delete Hearthstone off my phone and kind of just be done. I mean, it's not a company that it's sad because historically they made games I really loved. They were always one of the rare like dual release PC Mac developers in the late 90s. I mean, all of their games like Diablo and Warcraft came out for both platforms with full support. But yeah, they just obviously they need to clean house. And my friend Corey, who does the Starting Point podcast, is a huge Blizzard fan, and yeah, he's completely canceled all his subscriptions, uninstalled everything, and he's just done as well, because it's just, I mean, I think it's one of those things that you kind of know is probably always going on, but then when you see the details in some of these reports, it's astoundingly bad.
Yeah, and that's where it's such a tough. Like I've seen, there's a developer who works at Apple now who she used to work at Blizzard at one point and left amid the, I think out of the controversy or out of the toxicity that was going on. I don't know the full details of her story, but I just had followed her because she was at Apple, and then all of a sudden she started tweeting about this as well, and her experiences and stuff, and just pointing out, trying to build, help people tell their story, obviously, out of this.
Right.
And there's even some mixed reactions in terms of, and obviously everybody has their own way of responding and needing how they need to respond, how they should respond. I'm not talking about the people who are perpetuating the toxic behavior, but I just mean as a developer who worked there or as a gamer who supports them. I think, there's varying degrees of response. Hopefully the most important one is like disgust at what happened. But she was she was saying on Twitter through the process of just like, the answer isn't necessarily to uninstall the games, because there's still lots of developers who work there who are genuinely good and want to create great games, and they
Right.
want to, whether it's World of Warcraft or whatever. And so, but for each person, like you said, your friend Corey, like I think that's a perfectly valid thing to do as well, is to uninstall it, just be like, I'm done with this whole thing. Because the gamers and the streamers and whoever are supporting Blizzard in talking about the game, playing the game, streaming the game, all that stuff, it helps create the marketplace for these games and is marketing for them. And so you are kind of by proxy saying, I'm okay with this, I'm going to keep playing. But I know it's more complicated and nuanced than that, obviously, for everybody. But I think it's just important to raise awareness about it, because that's the only way we can actually get anything better. Hopefully, if it was just managed by Blizzard internally, we know very well that money trumps any sort of actual healing or any sort of action inside the company. As long as the stock price is going up or whatever, and the sales are still there, they're not going to be motivated to do much. So, anyways, and
that's a good point. I don't know, if enough people are, going to change their purchasing behavior enough that Blizzard will feel it enough that they feel like they need to make some significant enough changes to actually make it a better place to work, especially for women and non-binary folks.
Mm-hmm.
I know a few of my old guildmates who have stayed playing World of Warcraft are still playing. I mean, I think they love the game, they're invested in the game, they have a lot of community there, and that's another factor to consider. I've been out of the community for long enough that I'm not like shutting out friends really by saying I'm not going to play, so it's easier in a way, but for other people that's like one of their primary communities.
Mm-hmm. I was just made a note here too of it's interesting having a show on Apple TV Plus called Mythic Quest, which is basically following a game development studio that has kind of like never directly, they kind of mock the idea in a sense, and I'd be interested. I don't know enough about all the ins and outs of everything that's going on, but whether a show like that is seen as supporting the idea that game development studios should be this toxic male ego-driven thing, because I could see someone watching that who's like, yay, I'm cheering for the guy who's obviously, in my view, is made to be a mockery of the toxic male bro developer character. But I could see someone watching it and thinking, that's who I want to be like. That's my guy. That's me.
I want to be that singular genius who controls everything. Yeah.
And without going into spoilers, I haven't actually seen all of season 2 now, which is out, I think, already.
Yeah, same.
So I don't know where it all goes exactly. So I'm not trying to portray the show as good or bad. I just, it's interesting.
Yeah. And that connects to there was another article that came out this past week about a small favorite indie studio, and you might think, oh well, it's the big AAA studios that have this problem. The indie studios, like, everyone just gets along. And there's this huge story about, again, that singular male genius creator at Fulbright. So they made Gone Home, which was like my hands down kind of game of the year of 2013. They made Tacoma, which I also really enjoyed. I didn't play it right when it came out, but I played it later last year sometime. And they're working on their next game, Open Road, and the what is his name? He's been kind of asked to leave the project, and
Steve Gaynor.
Steve Gaynor, that's right. And in this case, it does not sound like there's a specific like harassment or assault angle. It's just toxic workplace, berating employees, taking control of projects, preventing people from advancing, the kind of just general negative, awful place to work kind of stuff. But yeah, they've removed him from the project, or put him aside, or just given him like a side producer role. And the people who are actually invested in the game, the creative team, really wants to still make the game. And that kind of goes to what you were saying. It's like, well, again, this one bad person at the top, or someone with really bad behavior at the top, hurts so many people, not just the people they directly hurt, but like everyone else who's now associated with the project and the brand. Maybe they don't get to finish what they were working on, or they have to move on because it's no longer safe, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, that one's that was a sad surprise as well, because that's a studio whose output I've really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely helps, or not helps. It makes it really difficult, and forces us to have the conversation about, like, do you separate the artist from the art, and how that all works, and who's responsible? Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've had that for sure with, favorite authors, and revisiting, well, is this a story that I want? I loved it as a kid, but I know the author's beliefs maybe are not something I want to get anywhere near. Or, is this something I want to share with my kids? So I think you could find similar things with films, and yeah, with video games too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So moving on from that, so we welcome your feedback. Obviously, if you're out there and you have questions or comments or whatever, we'd love to hear from you, and even on things we've said or not said on issues
yes,
like this.
Certainly. I mean, two white dads talking about video games is we probably have stepped in it somewhere, but this is something that is definitely important to making the industry more inclusive and safe for everyone who wants to work on video games.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, you had Accenture. How do you say that? Accenture presentation on gaming.
Accenture, yeah, they're like a consulting company. I just saw this. There was this presentation going around, and I think this is one of those things that they give to businesses to say, like, here's why you should invest in a game studio.
Right.
But it had a couple of interesting stats in it. They currently estimate that there are 2.7 billion people worldwide who play video games. It has the potential to be a $300 billion industry. And the current split is 52% male, 46% female in terms of the game audience, which is basically getting pretty close to balance. I think historically that number was much farther off. And there's some other interesting stats in there if you look at the link in the show notes. Mm-hmm. But like we've talked about before, the big growth area of games is more women, more non-US, more mobile. It's not where all the money and talk is, which is mostly young adult men in the US playing 3D shooters on console, right? Like that's the stereotype.
Are you talking to me? You can just say Fortnite.
Oh no,
okay.
I've got your number. Yes, I'm talking about Chris Enns playing Fortnite. But yeah, I think that's it's a recognition that the industry at least sees where the market is going, and maybe that's one of those things that'll actually help with what we were just talking about, in that if the audience is changing a lot, the way games are made has to change a lot too.
Yeah, and hopefully that shows. Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to repeat what you said. It's just they'll follow the money, and if they see that there's actually more people besides white dudes playing video games, they'll hopefully develop for people who are not just white dudes, or let developers in who are not just white dudes. So
yeah,
it can only help.
And selfishly, I mean, I'm not really interested in the game that would fit my stereotype, at least not anymore. And so I really do want to see these little artsy, short, mobile, enjoyable game experiences like we see on Apple Arcade and hopefully on Playdate and other platforms as well.
Yeah. And in defense of the white dudes playing video games, shooting whatever 3D platform shooting games, definitely I've tried. Call of Duty is really popular. I forget which one, Call of Duty Warzone or something like that. And it's just like, I don't know, maybe I'm getting, if it's soft or whatever it is in my older age, but the running around with graphic violence feels really kind of just boring to me at this point in video gaming.
Hmm.
It was really interesting at first when it kind of came out, but I don't know. Having watched wars, having seen people playing a video game version of a war, but actually in a tank and things like that, like in a real tank, and it all just kind of feels a little gross now, I guess. And so I'm not passing judgment on everyone else, but that's just for me. Like I've multiple times I've heard people talking about how much fun they're having, with their crew in Call of Duty or whatever. And so I'll download it on the Xbox. It's free to play, just like Fortnite. I uninstall it afterwards, and it's like 100 gig download of wasted bandwidth. But there is, like, my mental brain anyways makes a distinction with Fortnite of it being cartoony and goofy more than accurate, and like they try and the mechanics of the game. You're still shooting people, so I mean I get that, but
Right.
the mechanics and the aesthetic of it is colorful and goofy more so than accurate and bloody, I guess. And so that's
Yeah.
my little
Yeah, there's a diff. It's is the violence in the mechanics or in the graph or in the aesthetic is very different. Like, are you going for some sort of hyper realistic thing, and like which one's worse? Like, does one or better? Right? Like, is one
yeah
train? I don't know. I mean, it all comes down to, in my understanding, from a game design perspective, right? Like, it's a mechanic that's easy to evaluate. Did deadly object X do enough damage to moving character Y, right? Like that's an easy, I mean, it's not easy, but from a game design perspective,
in 2021,
yeah, it's something that you can make sense pretty easily. Whereas other game mechanics that might be more out there, you have to kind of spend more time kind of figuring out how they would work.
yeah
I did want to touch on real quick. I think The Verge had a Steam Deck hands-on review that I skimmed, but the striking thing is, unsurprisingly, the one we mentioned, which is they have a photo showing a Switch stacked on top of the Steam Deck, and I mean the Switch with both Joy-Cons docked has always felt a little large to me, and this is a good inch and a half larger on each side. So you're going to be playing.
That's
with your hands out to both sides.
That's a big problem.
So, yeah, I wonder how much that'll affect the appeal of the device. I certainly don't. Seeing that just really confirms for me. I don't see myself being interested in this because the hardware, I think, would be just too uncomfortable to use for very long.
Yeah, because unlike the Switch, there isn't even an option to dock it per se, right? Like, because your controller or the device is the controller. There isn't, like,
yeah, I mean, presumably you could
but
use a wireless controller with it, just like
right.
any other PC. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting proposition that is definitely just not for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the absence of having a video game or a PC to play video games on, I could see that being a handy little way of getting into that. But even then, it feels for a family, anyways, it feels a little too small, too unshareable, I guess. Whereas a console or a PC actually has a little bit more support for that. So moving on. Oh, I don't have my. It's all closed up here. Let's check out how our car is doing right
The
now.
soundboard is offline. Oh, there we go.
There we go. We added a foghorn
Sorry,
to the Apple corner.
Yes. Yeah. So Apple Corner, have you been playing much on arcade lately? Obviously, screen time limited. You were out of town for a little bit there.
Yeah, out camping and definitely trying to avoid looking at the screen as much. And so, I did download Alto's Odyssey a bit, played with that a bit. My kids kind of remembered playing it when it first came out years ago, and kind of tried it a little bit. But other than that, we have not dabbled too much. And it's amazing how even having 1 to 2 bars of cellular coverage really limits anything on a phone these days versus 3 to 4 bars. It's, at least out here, it's like dramatically. It's not a 50% drop off. It's kind of like basically almost useless. Not that the games themselves all require internet, but any amount of data check-ins or whatever just takes that much longer to do. And so the motivation wasn't there. Plus being outside in nature and trying to avoid the screen as well. So how about you? What did you tap into?
Yeah, so I threw some links in the show notes, just some other reviews of Alta's Odyssey, but I did grab Jetpack Joyride Plus. So I had played the original. I think it was just free to play at the time, but maybe I paid for it when it was out years ago. At some point, I had actually gone back to revisit it, but all my progress had been lost, so I just uninstalled it. I don't know, sometime migrating between phones or Game Center versions or something, it lost my progress. But yeah, I mean, it's the same old game. They've added a few new mechanics, a few new things you can gain coins for and purchase from the store. I thought it was a little odd that Apple Arcade decided to release basically two endless runners at the same time. They're pretty different in both style, but in general, you're going as far as you can. You're completing little missions. You're collecting coins that you can then use in the store to unlock new gadgets or cosmetic elements. Um, I would say the one thing with Jetpack Joyride, I have been enjoying playing it. I think I'm like level, I don't know, 31 or something in terms of mission completion. Is it kind of feels like they didn't do much of a graphics update pass, and maybe that's just the nature of the way the Arcade Plus program works, where the developers are getting a new incentive to update their game, but not enough to like redraw all their pixel art, right? So that was the only thing I noticed. I mean, it is trying to look retro, so I may just be misremembering how it looked before, but that was my quick impression.
And it's interesting that just seeing them side by side like that, Alto's Odyssey, Lost City got a sort of a new game ish, but isn't repackaged under Alto's Odyssey Plus or something like that. Whereas Jetpack Joyride,
Right.
Jetpack Joyride Plus, which is sort of their moniker for like a game that you played before, but we're just going to repackage quickly and add to the arcade. And I don't know what the reasoning for that. I'm happy that they both exist, I guess, but just an interesting little dynamic that they did as far as packaging them up. So.
Yeah, I think it's like so. Alto's Odyssey, Lost City. It's the same core mechanic, but a new game with some slight differences. And Jetpack Joyride Plus is the basically the same game, just with all the updates and arcade integration. Um, the other Plus game I tried really quickly because my wife was enjoying it was one of the timeless classics. So this was the big dump of games from a few months ago. It's Sudoku Simple Plus. So this was one of the many Sudoku apps on the store, and this is a very minimal Sudoku. It's pretty easy. There's no notes function, so they can't do terribly complex Sudoku inference puzzles. I think Good Sudoku Plus is your better entry here from Zach Gage and team. Because it has the notes functionality, it has multiple game modes, it kind of teaches you how to play Sudoku. This is nice. This Sudoku Simple is nice in that it's very just like the most relaxing, empty your mind kind of Sudoku, which I think really is one of the appeals of Sudoku for many people. They don't want the puzzle; they want to just like, yeah, I'm just kind of like going through and matching the numbers, and it's right before bed. And it's almost soporific, and that's good too. So I tried that one briefly.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually funny. Camping, nobody was doing it on their phones, but someone had brought a Sudoku book, and that kind of got passed around as we're getting old. We need to
analog Sudoku. That's a thing you can do.
Yeah, I think it was Sudoku Plus Pencil is called.
Yes, yeah, and doesn't require any bars. So
exactly, or battery power or anything. I mean, I guess you need light, so that's the one issue. But yeah, they definitely managed that. So yeah, in brief, before we leave Apple Corner, Ted Lasso season 2 has launched, which I'm a big fan of, and 3 episodes are out now, I believe.
Yes,
I think we're up to.
Yeah,
it just came out, and so have any thoughts on season 2? Sorry, not season 3.
Yeah, enjoying it so far. We just watched episode 3 last night. I think both my wife and I feel like they're cramming a little bit too much plot into the time they have. So there's some moments that don't really get enough time to breathe, but they're hitting all of the elements that we loved about the first season. The witty one-liners, the goofy charm, all of that. I did see an interesting tweet thread from is it Brendan Hunt, one of the co-creators?
Yeah, Coach Beard.
Who plays Coach Beard.
Yeah.
Basically saying that they wrote the first 3 episodes under the expectation that they'd be dropped all at once, like the first season. And so that's maybe why the pacing felt a little weird, in that they were kind of intended to be a trilogy of 3 episodes that you'd binge on the first day season 2 dropped. But instead, Apple has spread them out over 3 weeks. So that's an interesting one where you're your creative team and the distributor haven't talked
Yeah.
about all the details, and then things get a little weird.
Yeah, or change plans or whatever. That's interesting. Actually, that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense because it does feel it felt a little odd, and I wanted to go back and rewatch the first three episodes just because you never know if it's just because you come in hyped with lots of expectations for season two after a really
Yes.
good season one or what it is. I'm really enjoying the fact that because I saw some criticism, maybe it's just one or two tweeters, but people saying like, oh yes, another white dude, in soccer or whatever, and like we need that or whatever. And I always kind of felt like after season one, I was like, and these are people who I think had watched two episodes and kind of given up, and so I kind of felt like in season one even Ted's there as a like draw, like even the actor Jason Sudeikis, he's there because he's the name draw and he brings people in to watch the show, but very much points the spotlight at other people, other relationships, he kind of comes in with the one liner, the funny thing to keep you laughing, but then actually lets you get into Sam or into Cristo Fernandez. Why am I dropping his name? But his actual character's name. But anyways,
Danny Rojas.
Yeah, football's life guy.
Yes.
And shines light on other people's stories more so than his own actually. And I kind of dug that about season two so far, is that it's very much not really a Ted Lasso story right now. It has very much to do with everybody else basically. And like you said, I think there is a lot going on, and hopefully they get more time to flesh out. And even having said that, the episodes I think are a little longer, or they were 39 minutes or so per episode ish, somewhere in there. So they're not hitting that 30-minute mark anyways. I don't know if they all did in the first season either, but anyways, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, it's a show I really enjoy, and I think it really hits on kind of connecting back to our earlier conversation. It really pushes back strongly on various forms of toxic masculinity in leadership and organizations, right? Either by mocking, like you said with Mythic Quest, the guys who kind of engage in the classic stereotype of what a manly man is, or highlighting the ways you can be, more thoughtful, more in touch with your emotions. And it's one of those shows that I think a lot of adults could enjoy and maybe even learn something from. Obviously not kid appropriate,
No.
or at least anything below upper teens, maybe. But yeah, there's some lessons there, and I guess in the meantime, you can get some positive emotional intelligence from Daniel Tiger and My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually the swearing actually is the most thing. So whether if maybe your kids are active swearers or whatever, I guess, but for us, the amount of our F-bombs, our daughter came down, couldn't sleep I think it was the second episode where Roy just goes off on the date guy, and he's just like F-bomb every second. And there's something about the British accent too that allows for swearing to be more elegant than I think the North American accent. But even still,
that's our North American feeling of everything sounds fancier in certain accents, right?
But she saw a picture somewhere else of Roy Kent, the actor, or I forget what it was, but she was like, "Oh, there's the sweary guy." And so, because it was one of those cases where your kid is like standing there and you don't know that they're there, and all of a sudden we realize she's standing there, at 11 o'clock at night or whatever, behind us on the couch, and like, how long have you been standing there? She's like, I heard him swearing a lot. So, at any rate.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit. We had some content related issues with the Olympics, not the games themselves, but so we were watching on Hulu live TV with Cloud DVR, and certain recordings on certain channels came with unskippable ads, including some ads for the new Chucky series, as in like possessed demonic doll. And it's like, really, you're just gonna throw that on during the Olympics, which is a like family sporting event? I mean, that's been a perennial complaint. I know my mom, I remember when I was a kid, my mom always being frustrated at the kinds of ads that would be shown during like baseball games and football games, in terms of appropriateness for relatively small children who could be watching.
All right, on to our last quick corner.
Yeah, we can turbo through tabletop corner here. A truckload of games being dropped off, along with another IKEA Kallax to hold them.
Yeah, so you got a new expansion? Or you?
So I think I mentioned this on the show maybe. I said, oh, we probably won't buy more Villainous expansions, and then literally the next day we were at Target and there was one half off, which was the Evil Comes Prepared expansion, which adds Scar, Uh, Wait, now I'm blanking on who else is in it. Scar from Lion King and Yzma from
Oh,
Emperor's New Groove, one of my
yeah.
favorite, all-time favorite Disney movies, because it's really a buddy comedy, not a musical. And then Ratigan from The Great Mouse Detective, which content-wise, I would say, has not aged as well as had remembered it. I thought that was a tame Disney movie, and there's some weird stuff in there. We tried that one with my son
Yeah.
several months ago, and it was like, oh, this is very much an earlier era of Disney. Anyway, um, and then we kind of go back to our usual favorite games. Dominion comes up a lot. Some of our two-player games like Seven Wonders Duel and Patchwork. Did you get in non-Sudoku game time while
Yeah,
camping?
the kids, my nephew has exploding. Well, they all have exploding kittens, but my nephew had gotten a bunch of expansions for it as well, and we'd given him one more for his birthday while we were there, and so that was definitely played a lot, which actually worked really well for um, outdoor camping game. You're always kind of like at the mercy of the wind in that situation, and hopefully it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't blow cards away or things get lost in the fire pit or whatever. But it worked really well. And actually, my niece, who's like 5, I think, just turned 5, was able to keep up with it too, which was impressive. And so, yeah, lots of fun of exploding kittens. Both the elder grandparents as well as the youngest kid all enjoyed it in various ways, and the various expansions that they had. So that was a fun one. Check out if you've got kids, and just make sure you don't get the and not safe for work version or expansion. Obviously, hopefully it goes without saying.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one on the shelves.
Yeah. And then I think this is a link from last time. I forgot I've forgotten why. The best board game of 2020 is a poster size hidden object game, micro macro crime city. I think I just threw it in here as worth mentioning. I think unless you did, am I remembering this wrong?
No, you added this one. I haven't been following the was it the Spiele des Jahres awards lately, but yeah, this is the winner, and other famous previous recipients are like the original Settlers of Catan won this in like 1996 or whatever. So this is a pretty illustrious award in the tabletop world, and usually an indicator of a game that is has some really great play.
Yeah, and I think
But I haven't
what
tried this one.
drew me to it is it's a big sort of black and white game board, and in the review they said it's not necessarily a great game, but in a tabletop setting it feels different enough to spark curiosity, and that the cognitive load required to get going is effectively zero, and for a lot of people that's all they can muster right now. It's kind of like a pandemic board game of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of just seems like a neat way, especially for kids who are like or people older adults or whatever who are less drawn into games and kind of just want to play cards. Something like this can be a nice way to like bridge that gap anyways of games that are easy to get drawn into and have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, definitely have some adult family members that card games and parlor kind of games are good. Any board games with mechanics that are like my usual jam are right out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's where you have to re-explain Settlers yet again, even though they played it
Yes.
at Valentine's Day or whatever last holiday was.
I mean, I think Settlers is actually, I mean, as popular as it is, it's probably not the best entry level game because it's got a lot going on.
Yeah, definitely.
I would say like a Carcassonne or something would be better.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's like that XKCD about you have to set aside all the game explanation time and then everyone has to go home by the time you've explained the rules.
Exactly. Yeah, at least Carcassonne I find you can like even if you just don't even pay attention at all, you can just play and place your tile, and you don't have to have any strategy, and you can still play the game and just kind of have your drink and snacks while other people are getting more intense and maybe mad at you for the way you place your farm or whatever. So
Yeah.
at any rate, we'll wrap this one up, and we want to thank you for listening to 25 Cents, our video game podcast. You can find me on Twitter at iCrisp with any of your responses to our comments.
And you can find me on Twitter and most everywhere else as Ultra Nerd. That's NURD.
And you can find 25 Cents, of course, wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure to check out our Good Stuff Patreon, patreon.com/goodstuff. See you later.
Bye.
All right.
All right. That was good. We crammed a lot in there. I didn't have a 10 o'clock today, so
Yeah, I was noticing the time there. So let's say goodbye to the stream, and whoever happens to be watching this video version, Goodstuff.network is where you can find more of our shows.